There is something that has lived inside me for so long that it has become heavier than anything else I have ever carried. Every day I convinced myself that I would finally tell you the truth, but every time I stood at the edge of that moment, fear won. Fear whispered that if you knew everything, you would never look at me the same way again. Fear convinced me that silence was safer than honesty. I listened to that fear for far too long, and now I understand that every day I stayed silent, I created another wall between us. The hardest part is knowing that I never wanted to hurt you. My silence was never meant to become a weapon, yet it slowly became one. Every unanswered question, every vague explanation, every smile that covered my uncertainty added another layer to the distance growing between us. You deserved transparency, but I gave you fragments. You deserved consistency, but I offered confusion. Looking back now, I can finally admit that I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting myself. I spent so much time trying to appear stronger than I really was. I wanted you to believe that I had everything under control, that I always knew what I was doing, and that nothing could shake me. The truth was completely different. Behind every confident word was someone questioning every decision. Behind every calm expression was someone fighting battles that no one could see. I thought that if I showed you my weaknesses, you would lose respect for me. Instead, hiding them caused far more damage than revealing them ever could have. You saw someone who seemed certain about the future, but inside I was terrified of what tomorrow might bring. I smiled when I felt lost. I laughed when I wanted to cry. I reassured you even when I couldn't reassure myself. I convinced myself that pretending was an act of love because I didn't want to burden you with my struggles. Now I realize that love cannot survive behind masks forever. Eventually the truth begins to push against every disguise until it can no longer stay hidden. There were moments when you looked directly into my eyes. Almost as if you could see through everything I was trying to hide. Those moments frightened me more than I can explain. Part of me wanted you to ask one more question because maybe then I would have found the courage to tell you everything. Another part of me prayed that you wouldn't ask because I wasn't ready to face what honesty might cost. The strange thing about carrying secrets is that they never become lighter. We tell ourselves that time will make them easier to hold, but the opposite happens. Every day they grow heavier. Every conversation becomes more difficult. Every promise feels incomplete because there is always something important left unsaid. I reached a point where even simple moments together carried the weight of everything I refused to reveal. I know there were times when my behavior made no sense. One day I seemed close, and the next day I pulled away without explanation. You probably wondered what changed overnight. The truth is that nothing changed overnight. The conflict had been building inside me for a long time. I wanted to move closer to you, but I was afraid that closeness would expose every part of me I had worked so hard to conceal. Instead of allowing myself to be vulnerable, I created distance. I thought distance would protect both of us, but it only created more questions and more pain. You may remember conversations that ended too quickly. You may remember messages that sounded colder than they should have. You may remember moments when I disappeared emotionally even while I was physically present. None of those moments reflected how deeply I cared. They reflected how overwhelmed I had become by the pressure of maintaining an image that was never completely real. There were nights when I replayed every conversation we had. I wondered if you noticed the hesitation in my voice. I wondered if you recognized the difference between the words I spoke and the emotions I buried. I asked myself countless times whether I should finally tell you everything. Then morning came, and I convinced myself to wait one more day. That single day turned into weeks, then months, and before I realized it, my silence had become a habit that seemed impossible to break. I also need you to know that my mistakes were never a reflection of your worth. They were a reflection of my own fears and insecurities. You offered patience when I deserved questions. You offered understanding when I deserved accountability. You gave me opportunities to be honest, and instead of accepting them, I hid behind carefully chosen words that sounded truthful without revealing the whole story. I often imagined what would happen if I finally admitted everything. In some versions of that future, you walked away without looking back. In others, you stayed but never trusted me again. Those imagined endings became so powerful that I forgot something important. I forgot that relationships cannot grow on assumptions. They grow through truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. I am no longer asking whether honesty is risky. Of course it is. Every genuine confession carries the possibility of rejection. Every sincere apology risks being unanswered. Every vulnerable conversation opens the door to disappointment. Yet I have finally realized that living behind a false sense of security is far more painful than facing an uncertain future built on truth. If there is one thing I regret more than anything else, it is allowing fear to make decisions that love should have made. Fear told me to hide. Love would have told me to trust. Fear convinced me that perfection was necessary. Love would have reminded me that authenticity matters far more than perfection ever could. I wish I had understood that sooner. Now I find myself standing at a place where I can no longer pretend that everything is fine. I can no longer expect you to understand actions that I never explained. I can no longer hope that silence will somehow repair what honesty alone has the power to heal. Whether this confession changes everything or changes nothing, it is still the truth that should have been spoken long ago. I don't expect instant forgiveness. I don't expect every question to disappear overnight. Trust is not rebuilt with one conversation, and wounds do not heal because someone finally admits they exist. I know that actions must follow these words. Consistency must replace confusion. Openness must replace avoidance. Patience must replace defensiveness. These are not promises made to impress you. They are commitments I must make if I truly want to become someone worthy of the trust one once took for granted. For the first time in a very long time, I am no longer trying to appear fearless. I am simply trying to be real. That reality includes flaws I spent years hiding, regrets I cannot erase, and lessons I learned much later than I should have. It also includes hope. Hope that truth, even when delayed, still has the power to begin something new. Hope that honesty can succeed where pretending always failed. Hope that whatever comes next will be built on something solid instead of something carefully constructed to hide my imperfections. This confession does not erase the past, but it finally allows me to stop running from it. No more pretending. No more carefully edited versions of myself. No more choosing comfort over truth. Whatever happens after this moment, at least the silence has finally ended, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like the person standing before you is no longer hiding behind a mask.